Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a blog roundup today, all about school holiday videos in 2024.
Oh, this will be
It
fun.
looks like a lot of schools are getting really creative.
Yeah, definitely more than just simple greetings these days.
Right. Like we saw in the Celebrate the Season blog, highlighting college videos.
The one from the University of Louisville was great, using their mascot, Louis the Cardinal, to spread some cheer
Yeah, it's a good way to get students excited.
and show off that school spirit for sure.
Definitely. And then you have schools like Georgia State University's College of the Arts taking a different approach.
Oh, right. With that animation made by their students.
Yeah, showcasing their talent in a unique way.
A nice way to celebrate the season.
For sure. And speaking of unique, the University of Michigan's video stood out to me.
What was special about that one?
They focused on their tree lighting ceremony and their partnership with a children's hospital.
Oh, that's sweet. Highlighting their community impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then some schools are thinking even further outside the box.
Like who?
The University of Toronto used TikTok to talk about exam stress.
Oh, wow. During the holidays.
Yeah, and they offered support to students too.
That's actually really smart. Shows they get what students are going through.
For sure.
Yeah.
Then there's McTavish High School using video to promote their Winter Wonderland dance.
And classic.
But a good way to get everyone pumped for the event.
Definitely. And beyond the content itself, it's cool to see the tech being used.
Right. The Roundup mentions some schools experimenting with virtual reality.
Oh, wow. Like which ones?
Schooled and schooled. I think they were pushing the limits a bit.
Makes sense. And of course, can't forget about TikTok and YouTube.
Huge platforms for reaching wider audiences.
For sure. Glenbard North High School used TikTok for their holiday spirit week.
Nice. And the University of West England, Bristol, showed off their campus decorations on YouTube.
It's interesting, though, how not all students engage with tech the same way.
Oh, right. You're thinking of that blog post on generational differences in online learning.
Yeah, exactly. Like Gen Z, they're super comfortable online. Well, the post mentioned they can be less satisfied with things like how quickly schools give them feedback.
Huh. That's an interesting point for schools to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Got to make sure everyone feels included and supported, no matter how they learn best.
Now, on a different note, the blog roundup also brought up some controversy around these holiday videos.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, some people are worried about the cost,
Yeah.
especially for schools with smaller budgets.
Makes sense. Not everyone can afford those big productions.
Right, and it could create a divide between the haves and have-nots.
That's a good point. Something to think about.
And then there's the whole question of authenticity.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes those super polished videos can feel a bit impersonal.
Like they're more about marketing than actual celebration.
Exactly. It's a tricky balance for schools.
Definitely. And that leads to another question that some people are asking.
What's that?
What's the real purpose of these videos?
You mean like, are they truly about the holidays or more about branding and publicity?
Exactly. It's a valid debate.
Definitely schools need to be upfront about their intentions.
And make sure their actions match their words.
For sure. So we see the good, the creative, and the controversial.
Quite a mix. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway so far?
I think schools need to be really mindful. These videos have potential, but they have to be made with a clear purpose.
And sensitivity to their communities.
Absolutely. Can't forget about that.
Couldn't agree more. We'll be back in a moment to continue our deep dive into the world of higher education in 2024.
It's kind of funny how these holiday videos tie into a bigger thing about communication in higher ed.
How so?
Well, schools are using all these different ways to reach students, right?
Like we were talking about texting earlier.
Right. And the Roundup actually included a post about best practices for texting in higher ed.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. It seems like a simple thing, but apparently there's a right and wrong way to do it.
Definitely. The post really stressed that texting should be treated like any other official communication from the school. Like it needs to be clear and concise and all that, respecting students' time.
Right, and getting consent before sending anything.
Exactly. And making sure students can opt out if they want.
Basically just being mindful of their preferences.
Yeah, for sure. Nobody wants to be bombarded with texts.
So it's about finding that balance between keeping students informed and not overwhelming them.
Absolutely. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about guided pathways.
Oh, yeah. That was another big topic in the Roundup.
Yeah, they even had a post about how this whole approach needs to evolve for the future.
Right. And I remember they talked about some of the challenges community colleges are facing.
Especially with things like staffing declines and the need for more remote services.
Yeah. It seems like they're having trouble keeping up with everything.
Well, that's where technology can help.
How so?
The post highlighted tools like EAB's Navigate 360 platform.
What does that do?
It helps colleges streamline things and provide more personalized support to students even remotely.
So basically using tech to overcome those staffing and distance barriers?
Exactly. It can give students 24/7 access to resources and help colleges track their progress better.
Sounds pretty useful. But even with the best tech, some programs still face unique challenges.
Right. Like what?
Well, the Roundup had a post specifically about lead generation for healthcare and nursing programs.
Oh, yeah, those are tough right now.
Definitely. The pandemic really shook things up in the healthcare industry.
Plus, you've got all that competition from for-profit and online providers.
It's a crowded market for sure. And the post mentioned that students are being more cautious too.
What do you mean?
They're doing more research before committing to a program.
They're becoming like little detectives.
Right. The post even called them stealth shoppers.
Because they're gathering intel but not giving up their contact info.
Exactly. So healthcare programs have to adapt to attract these stealthy students.
Oh.
Well, the post suggested things like diversifying their approaches and leveraging dynamic lead sources.
No, okay.
And creating those personalized journeys for prospective students.
It's all about making them feel seen and heard.
Right, like they're not just another face in the crowd.
Exactly. You got to make it personal.
Seems like higher ed in general is becoming more focused on that individual student experience.
I think you're right. It's not just about throwing information at them anymore.
It's about meeting them where they are and understanding their unique needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And tech is playing a big role in making that happen.
Totally enabling those personalized approaches and support systems.
It's definitely an exciting time to be in higher education.
Lots of innovation and a real commitment to student success.
Couldn't agree more. So as we wrap up part 2, what's the one big takeaway you'd like our listeners to think about?
Good question. I think it's the interconnectedness of all these topics.
Like how holiday videos and guided pathways and even SEO all relate to student success.
Exactly. It shows how schools are pulling out all the stops to help students reach their goals.
And how tech is weaving its way into every aspect of that effort.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating landscape that's constantly evolving.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We'll be back in a moment to finish up our deep dive and leave our listeners with some final thoughts.
Wow, we covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into higher education trends for 2024.
It's been quite a journey. From holiday videos to texting strategies to student success initiatives and even search engine optimization.
And while we explored a bunch of different areas, it feels like there's a common thread running through it all.
I agree. It seems like higher education is becoming more and more focused on the individual student experience.
Absolutely. Schools are finally recognizing that students have different needs and preferences.
And they're adapting their approaches to match.
Exactly. Like we saw with those holiday videos, some schools are using them to connect with students in a more personal way.
And then you have the emphasis on personalized learning in both undergraduate and graduate programs.
Right. It's not just about lectures and textbooks anymore.
And even those best practices for texting and the strategies for guided pathways, they all emphasize understanding individual student needs.
It's clear that higher ed is moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach.
Towards a more student-centered model.
And technology is a big part of that shift.
Definitely. It's helping schools personalize the learning experience and provide support that's tailored to each student.
It's really exciting to see these positive changes happening in higher ed.
For sure. There's so much innovation and a real commitment to student success.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to ponder?
I think it's this. The future of higher education is about more than just delivering knowledge.
It's about empowering students to become lifelong learners.
Exactly. To help them become critical thinkers and engaged citizens who are ready to make a positive impact on the world.
That's a powerful thought and a perfect note to end on.
I agree. It's been great exploring all this with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of higher education. We encourage you to share your own thoughts and experiences with us on social media. What resonated with you most? What questions do you still have? Let's keep the conversation going.